20%. 1/5 of the world's oil supply flows through a single passage of water, barely 21 miles wide. And right now, that passage is closed. Over 1,000 tankers stranded, prices surging past $100 a barrel. And the energy agency that tracks every barrel on Earth just called this the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. But here's what stopped me. 2,500 years ago, long before anyone drilled for oil, long before the word energy meant what it means today, a prophet named Daniel was standing in a city on the edge of this very waterway. And what he saw in a vision reads like a map of what's unfolding right now. By the end of this video, you're going to see a map that most people have never noticed, hidden in one of the oldest books ever written. And when you overlay it on today's headlines, I think it's going to change the way you see this crisis and this region forever. Let's open the scroll. Now, I want to be clear. We're exploring this as students of history and scripture. This isn't about predicting the future. This is about understanding patterns. And what we find is remarkable. Let's start with the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verses 1 through 4. Listen carefully, not just to what Daniel sees, but to where he's standing when he sees it. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel. And I saw in the vision, and it came to pass, when I saw, that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Now stop right there. The text gives us an exact address. Shushan, also known as Susa, in the province of Elam. This isn't vague. This is a GPS coordinate buried in an ancient text. And where is Elam? It's the ancient name for a region in modern-day southwestern Iran, a region called Khuzestan today, a region that sits directly on the northern shore of the Persian Gulf, right next to the Strait of Hormuz. Let me read what Daniel sees next. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. Now here's what's extraordinary. We don't have to guess what this means. The angel Gabriel himself appears later in the same chapter, verse 20, and tells Daniel plainly, the ram with 2 horns represents the kings of Media and Persia, the empire that would rise from this very land, the land of Elam, the land we now call Iran. But there's another passage that many overlook. Turn back to Isaiah chapter 21. The very first verse opens with one of the most haunting titles in all of Scripture, the burden of the desert of the sea. The desert of the sea. Scholars have long identified this as a reference to the region around Babylon, where the arid plains meet the waters of the Euphrates and the marshlands that stretch toward the Persian Gulf. And look at verse 2. It names the players. Go up, O Elam. Besiege, O Media. There it is again. Elam and Media, called by name, connected to a body of water, connected to upheaval. But to understand why these ancient names matter, why a prophet standing by a river in Elam 2,500 years ago might be looking at the same choke point the world is watching today, we need to go back, way back, to a civilization most people have never heard of. The civilization was called Elam, and for nearly 3,000 years, from roughly 2700 BC until its absorption into the Persian Empire, it was one of the most powerful forces in the ancient Near East. So powerful, in fact, that Mesopotamian kings addressed the Elamite rulers not as brother, the usual diplomatic greeting between equals, but as father. They were the senior power, the dominant force, Their king Untashnapirisha built one of the greatest ziggurats in the ancient world at a site called Choga Zanbil, a temple tower still standing today, over 3,000 years later, in modern Iran. And their warriors were feared from Sumer to Canaan. Genesis 14 records an Elamite king leading a military coalition into the land that would become Israel. Its capital was Susa, the same city Daniel names in his vision. And Susa wasn't just any city. It was one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the ancient world. Founded around 4,200 BC, 1,000 years before the pyramids. It sat at a crossroads that connected Mesopotamia to the west with India to the east. Scholars at the World History Encyclopedia describe Elam as a conduit for trade between Mesopotamia and all points east. And the highway between them, water, the Persian Gulf. Archaeologists have found evidence of trade networks stretching from Susa all the way to the Indus Valley, over 3,000 miles, dating back to the 3rd millennium BC. During the Sargonic period, around 2350 BC, the kings of Akkad built what historians now call the first great commercial highway of the Near East, running from the Indus Valley through the Persian Gulf to southern Mesopotamia. Susa was a critical node on that highway. Cuneiform tablets from Susa record shipments of sesame, copper, lapis lazuli, and tin arriving by sea from Dilmun, what we now call Bahrain, and from ports along the Gulf Coast. One tablet even mentions a maritime merchant living in Susa during the Ur III period, around 2100 BC. This was a port civilization, a gateway, and everything moved through the Gulf. Now here's a detail most people completely miss. Susa connected to the Gulf through the Karen River system, the same waterway that flows through Khuzestan today. Goods from as far away as Afghanistan moved through Susa to reach the open sea. And that open sea, it emptied through one narrow passage, the same passage we now call the Strait of Hormuz. Even the name carries ancient weight. Most scholars trace the word Hormuz back to the Middle Persian form of Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity of Zoroastrianism. In the ancient world, the strait was not merely a geographic feature. It was a threshold, a sacred boundary between the sheltered waters of the Gulf and the vast unknown of the Indian Ocean. First-century sailors described it in the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea without even naming it. They simply called it the mouth of the Persian Gulf. To them, it was already obvious. Whoever held this narrow gate held the key to everything that moved between east and west. Let me put that in perspective. 4,500 years ago, goods were already flowing through this choke point. The routes changed, the cargo changed, but the geography never moved. When Cyrus the Great conquered Elam and built the Persian Empire, he made Susa one of his imperial capitals, the place from which officials were dispatched to Egypt, India, and the farthest corners of the known world. The historian Herodotus described the Royal Road, a highway stretching from Susa to Sardis near the Mediterranean, as the backbone of the empire. Inscriptions found at Persepolis confirm that officials departed from Susa and returned to Susa, as if it were the nerve center of everything. But here's what ties it all together for students of the Bible. This city, Susa, is one of the most frequently named foreign cities in all of Scripture. The book of Esther, set entirely in Susa. Queen Esther walked these halls. Nehemiah received his commission to rebuild Jerusalem while serving the king in Susa. The prophet Jeremiah, in chapter 49, wrote an entire oracle against Elam, speaking of its bow being broken, and Daniel received his vision right here, at the river Ulai, in the province of Elam, at the gateway to the Gulf. The Bible keeps coming back to this place, and the world, it seems, keeps coming back with it. So ask yourself, is it a coincidence that the prophet who saw the future of Persia was placed at the exact geographic nerve center of Persian power? a city that controlled access to the most important waterway in the ancient world. Now, the Portuguese knew it when they seized Hormuz Island in 1507. The British knew it when they patrolled these waters in the 19th century. The Safavid dynasty fought to reclaim it in 1622. Every empire that ever dominated this region understood the same truth: control the passage, control the world. And the world is learning that lesson again, right now. Because what was once a route for sesame and lapis lazuli is now the route for 20 million barrels of oil every single day. So now you've seen the ancient world. You've stood where Daniel stood. You've traced the trade routes that ran through this narrow gate for 4,000 years. But here's the part that will make you put your phone down. Because when we take what the text says and overlay it on what's happening today, the parallels are unlike anything I've seen. And I want to walk you through 3 specific parallels. Not speculation, not guesswork, just geography, history. The first parallel, the location. Daniel's vision is set in Susa, province of Elam. Today that's Khuzestan, Iran. The province that contains Khuzestan alone holds an estimated 90 billion barrels of one of the largest concentrations of petroleum on Earth. It borders the Persian Gulf. It sits at the head of the passage that feeds the Strait of the Karun River, still flows through it. The same river, the ancient trade gateway and the modern energy gateway, separated by 25 centuries. If you placed a pin on Susa and drew a line south to the vertical bar, you would pass through the heart of Iran's oil vertical bar before arriving at the strait that now holds the global vertical bar. Now I need you to really focus here. The second parallel, the power. Daniel sees a ram pushing westward, northward, and southward. No beast can stand before it. It does as it pleases, and Gabriel tells Daniel this ram is the power of media now. Look at the modern map. Iran cannot defeat the world's strongest militaries. Many military analysts have noted this. But what it can do is push economically. By controlling one narrow choke point, Iran has leveraged in a way that no other nation has done in modern history. The International Energy Agency has described the current, the largest in the history of the oil market. Prices that were around $72 a barrel surged. Over 1,000 tankers stranded. 20 million barrels, ship tracking data showed traffic in the strait dropping too. And this week, the world's most powerful nations are about speaking how to reopen a waterway that one country using mines. Let me read Daniel 8:4 one more time. He did according to. Whether this text was describing the ancient Medo-Persian, the mechanics are identical. And here's where it gets remarkable. The third parallel. Go back to Isaiah 21, verse 1. The burden of the desert. Scholars like John Gill in the Pulpit Commentary have long the flat, arid plain that meets the marshes and waters. Desert meeting sea. Now look at a satellite image of the Strait of Hormuz. On one side, the Arabian desert. On the other, the waters. Desert, sea, a narrow gate between them. Isaiah named it, not as a prophecy of oil, but as that has not moved in 2,700 years. And the command that follows? Go up, O Elam. Remember what I said at the beginning? That there's a map hidden in one of the oldest books ever. This is that map. Daniel at Susa. Isaiah naming the desert of the sea. Ezekiel listing Persia first among the nations, and chapter a coalition described in military terms, armed with shields. 3 different prophets, 3 different centuries, all pointing to the same narrow strip of water, all naming, all describing power, concentrated, geographic, strategic, and here we are, watching the headlines catch up to a text. The real question is, what does it mean for you? What does it tell us about how ancient texts speak to they rush to the question, is this being fulfilled right now? And I understand the impulse, but that's not the question. The deeper question is this: what kind of text knows the geography of power? Thousands of what kind of document names Elam, places a vision at thee and describes a force that pushes in every direction. And whether you read these as divinely inspired or as the work of the pattern is undeniable. The geography held, the choke point held, the power dynamics, a regional force leveraging a narrow. And consider this, the book of Daniel was written during the away time when Israel had lost everything, their temple, and yet, in the middle of that darkness, Daniel is given a knot of revenge, not of escape, but of geography, of empires. As if to say, even when you can't see the plan, the map is. And here's what I want you to take from this. In a world where the news cycle makes everything feel where crises seem to erupt from nowhere, these ancient texts offer something rare. They offer a framework, not a prediction, a framework. A way of seeing that the forces shaping our world have roots, that the map you're watching on the news tonight was drawn. And that means you don't have to feel helpless when you see. You don't have to scroll through the news at 2 because the same text that mapped the geography also mapped. And the outcome in every one of these prophets is not. That doesn't mean we should be afraid. It means the opposite. It's moving along lines that were understood before we were. And that, to me, is not a reason for fear. It's a reason for we started this video with a number. 20%, 1/5 of the world's oil, held hostage by a strait. And we've traced that strait back through time, through the Persian Empire, through the trade routes through the visions of Daniel standing by the river Ulai. And what we found is a pattern, not a prediction, a pattern. A map that was drawn in broad strokes 2,500 and still traces the outlines of the world we live in today. If that gives you anything tonight, let it be this. You are not watching chaos. You are watching history move. And if the map was right about the geography, maybe it's because every one of these texts, Daniel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, not with destruction, with restoration, with a promise that the one who drew the map is still. And that means the story isn't over. It means the most important chapter, the one about, is still being written. And you and I, we get to be part of it, not as spectators, as people who saw the pattern and chose. If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't seen, if this map meant something to you, hit subscribe and turn. Every week, we go deep into the connections with real research, real sources, and no fear-mongering. And I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which of the 3 parallels the location, the power, or the phrase desert of the sea? Drop your answer below. And next time on Scrolls of Fire, we're leaving the desert and heading to a kingdom that most a kingdom mentioned in the Bible by name. A kingdom whose descendants built civilizations that if you've ever wondered where Africa appears in Scripture, you're going to want to see what we've found.